Hello, good evening, and welcome to the LFC Daytrippers. It's Monday night, and that can only mean one thing: it's winners and losers. I'm the host tonight, Keith, and I'm joined by Monday night regulars, P, Dicko, and Kev. Lads, how are you? I know, Kev, you're not a Monday night regular, but you're in every other night regular, so we'll throw you in a Monday night banner as well. Dicko, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I know it's been a while, and I was tempted, as the saying before we come on, I was going to put my hand up for last week, but it felt a bit like, glory hunting sort of thing. So off the back of a disgraceful performance, I thought, yeah, let's go on this week instead. Yeah.
This sounds right up your street. This is more your wheelhouse, isn't it?
Yeah. Bit of moaning.
Oh yeah, we wouldn't have it any other way. Pete, how are you? You're not sitting in an airport cubicle this week, no?
No, thanks be to Jesus. I'm back in sunny Spain. I'm not surrounded by gammons in the UK, well down south. So I'm delighted to be home. But it's bizarre, that my experience in the UK working last week pretty much mirrors some of what we're gonna talk about today. Great to see Dicko back. Dicko, is this 2018 again? I hope so.
I think I was watching something going much further back than 2018 at the weekend.
Well, if there's any gammons in the chat, we apologise for fans. Of course, there's not. Gammons out always. Kev, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. One more game till the break, and do you know what? With all of the football that we've watched since the World Cup, I need a break from it now. I'm at that stage with not just with Liverpool, but with football in general. That the oversaturation of football is killing me. I used to be an absolute vacuum for every kind of football that was going from League One, Championship, Germany, Spain, Italy, Premier League. I watched everything. My missus loved life because she didn't have to see me in the weekends. I was gone. But like at the minute, it's bad enough watching Liverpool at the minute. It's hard, right? We get that, but everything else is turgid as well, and it's not being helped by again another one of the topics we'll talk about through the show. Other than that, I'm good.
Oh yeah, that's it. We get all that out of the way.
Looking forward to St. Patrick's Day as well. Nice.
Sure. Why wouldn't you be? A nice long weekend to see the festivities started in London this weekend.
Yeah,
and Cheltenham. It's Cheltenham week as well. So for any racing fans out there, it's like Christmas Eve.
Yeah. The bookies that like playing end of day and stuff, aren't they trying to get in there when Cheltenham is on? It's a bleeding nightmare. But anyway, tonight, winners and losers. You've all seen the show before. So what we're going to have is we're going to have 4 topics. There's going to be 2 of us are selecting a loser and 2 of us are selecting a winner. So we'll get straight into the swing of it. So we'll start off with Dicko. What's your topic?
Yeah, my winner. I know we'll come on to Liverpool later, but we really
have a shot at him, yeah.
we really handed the initiative, didn't we, back to our top 4 rivals, and then obviously you had United's maybe a surprise, but probably not to everyone. But obviously, with getting a man sent off, they drop points. The Spurs, they dispatch of Nottingham Forest as you'd expect. But I think this was the weekends that all Newcastle fans, I would imagine, would have been looking at as one that they really had to get back to some semblance of form and put in a performance, get 3 points. And they did exactly that. I watched that game, obviously, because the relevance to us now. And in fairness, they've obviously had the distractions of a cup run all the way to the final, the prospect of winning the first trophy in generations that passed them by. But I think their league form suffered a little bit as a result of that going so deep in that League Cup. And now I guess they've now got the benefit of having a sole focus, which is top 4, and they're absolutely, in amongst it. The games in hand, because of all the sort of fixture congestion are associated with that cup and whatnot. And I thought they handled it well yesterday. Wolves, as we know, can be tricky. They pegged them back. but they weren't deterred by that, and they were able to bring on like the top scorer from the bench, bit of squad depth that they've got, and they were able to get the winner. So they've come out of this weekend really, I think, I would imagine, with a renewed kind of belief that this is up for grabs, this fourth place, because there's so much inconsistency around them, especially from two teams who you would say are better than them on paper in Liverpool and Spurs, but Newcastle are definitely there, and we shouldn't dismiss them as rivals for that fourth spot, or even maybe third. Who knows what happens to United over the next few weeks? It obviously be doing us a great favour if they got dragged in and it was there was two spots up for grabs rather than just the one.
It's the biggest thing about Liverpool, isn't it? And we'll come on to them later on, but when you see Manchester United dropping points, you really do see that there was an opportunity there to reel them back in. And while Newcastle and Spurs are probably looking at it and thinking, yeah, there's two places up for grabs, Liverpool made it hard. Before we move on to the boys here, just for their opinions on Newcastle, Nigel whacked in a super chat 2 hours ago. Fair play. Wow. Hoping for another Liverpool miracle on Wednesday. 1-5 to the Reds. By the way, thank you for the fantastic content as always. Look, thanks for the super chat, Nigel. As everyone knows, that'll all go towards the charity, the breast cancer research, the 12 ladies running the Dublin Marathon, and everything that we get through super chats goes to that cause. So thanks very much for that. We'll discuss a bit of that in a while. Between the lads, I don't think it'll be a long conversation, but we'll give her a bashing anyway. But Newcastle, Peter, I'll come to you. What do you make of the Town Army at the moment? Do you agree with Dicko? Have they given themselves a good chance?
I don't see anything special about Newcastle United at all.
I hate them.
To be honest with you, no, genuinely, I don't. I think Wolves are an extremely poor side, and Newcastle look decent in patches against them. In saying that, they should have had a penalty against them. They should have had a player sent off. Whenever I've seen Newcastle when it's time to reform, the problem with Newcastle, I think they suffer in front of their own fans, more so even than we do. They've never been able to conquer that, and they really get the stage fright in front of their own, because I don't know if you've ever been to St. James's Park, but I've been there, and I think it frightens them. And forget about whenever it gets to cup finals, don't know whether it's a club, but I saw Eddie Howe's posts that he put around the training ground that, remember lads, we haven't won a trophy since 1969. I don't know what kind of management that was, to be quite honest. I know Eddie Howe was supposed to be the super genius, the answer to everything, but talking about it, you want to get everybody's thinking away from it. Whenever things get important, like the night against Liverpool, they completely swallow it. I think Newcastle will fall away and end up sixth. I think Spurs will do the same, and we will have a charge. Liverpool are at their most dangerous when nobody expects them to do anything, when people write them off. When people expect Liverpool to do well, like Saturday morning, they inevitably throw a bollock in and do something ridiculous. But whenever it's up against it, I'm not saying that about Madrid, but 7-0 versus Manchester United, I don't care where you play them. That's Liverpool all over. We've got big games. I look at Chelsea, look at City, look at the Arsenal. I think we'll win all those games. But Newcastle, yeah, Ray, I take your point. Newcastle are brilliant at wasting time, but you have to have something to hold on to. That's okay against Wolves and against the Shy, but when it comes to the big test, Newcastle fail every single time. They just didn't show up at Wembley. I don't understand why everybody's saying, I just don't think they're a realistic contender. They don't know how to win. Spurs are the same. I fancy us for fun.
Dicko, you want to jump in there? I sensed you are looking to.
No, fight and talk from Pete. They play United again in a couple of games' time, so that'll be a big one. As to which direction they're going to go. They've got what you would think a fairly handy game against Forest on Friday night. So, look, it's in the face of the fact that we've got 3 really difficult fixtures coming up in the league. Couldn't really get much tougher than the next 3 in some respects. I looked at them and said 4 points maybe for us. If we're only getting 4 points over the next 3 games, like we're going to have a real struggle to to make ground on some of these other teams above us. So I'm not bullish. I'm not bullish. I know it'll come on to us, but I'm not bullish.
Indeed. Kev, what do you make of the Tomb Army? Sniffer 1973 is delighted that little old Newcastle living our heads. Listen, Sniffer, I've no problem with Newcastle and the people in Newcastle and the Geordies and all that stuff. I actually like Newcastle as a team. I don't like Eddie Howe. I don't like the new sense of inevitability that they're just going to be buying titles. The same way I don't like with Man City. It's nothing personal against you boys. Certainly not living around.
No, everyone, listen, Newcastle is your pet dog. Everybody likes Newcastle. Newcastle are on. I remember when Kevin Keegan was in charge. Everybody likes Newcastle because they're not a threat. They're like a big dog with no teeth. They've loads of fans. They don't do anything, and their fans are fun. I've been when I lived in West London, used to go and watch them whenever they'd come to town. So if Fulham were playing them, I'd go, and everybody was entertained by Newcastle supporters because they're the clowns of the Premier League. They're great crack. They're good people. You know, they have fat fans with bald heads. And they go around naked in the window. It's great. It's entertaining.
What are you trying to say?
But they don't threaten anybody. They don't win trophies. It's a great show when Newcastle in town, but inevitably everybody beats them and they end up with nothing. So, you know, what the reason they're in people's heads right now is they're hanging on a little bit longer than they normally do. But they'll do their usual. They'll fall away at the end and they'll win nothing. You know, and you know, Eddie Howe, again, somebody asked Eddie Howe if he thinks that spending should be capped. And he came out and said, no, because we won't be able to do what we want to do as quickly as we want. So he's more or less saying it's going to be about spend. And I like Eddie Howe, but no, I think Newcastle is everybody's second team. They're no threat. They're like a big dog with no teeth.
Red Steve, I think Red Steve's got a point. You know, they don't have to be amazing now to clinch their fourth place. They just need to be less shit than the rest of us, and we're proven.
That's it in a nutshell.
Give them a helping hand, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Look, Newcastle have 3 or 4 really, really good players. Bruno Guimaraes is a very good player. Kieran Trippier is a lovely player. Really like him a lot. His delivery from set pieces, his delivery from wide is excellent. You have Isak to hit up front. You have Wilson to get in on the back of that. They're effective at what they do. Botman, I think, has been a brilliant signing for them. But at the same time, like Steve says, they don't have to be excellent. This season, 70 points could get you 4th. Less. It's like the one thing that you can say from Man City down the league, all the way down to the bottom. The only consistent thing that you can say is there's no consistency. Nobody is consistent. And anyone can get on a run. 4 or 5 games, the table looks completely different. You go and win 5 games, the table is completely different and you have different conversation. Can they get over the line? That's a huge question. The other thing that comes into play is the inevitability about what happens if they get into the Champions League. We all know what's coming, and it's going to be very difficult for anyone else to compete with what they're capable of doing. But on the flip side of it, my feelings on Newcastle, the club, the ownership, well known. Can't stand them. The lies that have been told to get them in the door is unbelievable. The amount of shit that Newcastle fans have had to shovel to justify their ownership is just no odds to no one. And fair play to some accounts on social media that are Newcastle accounts that don't shovel shit and they'll get hounded for it. But at the same time, I don't like the off-field stuff. Never will. But some of the Newcastle fans that I know, some of the Newcastle fans that we've had on a Friday night show, they're really sound people and they're football people. They have gone to football way before the money came. Yeah. And they'll go when the money, they'll still be going into the Gallagher when the money's gone. They're the people I kind of feel for in a way because unlike Man City, Newcastle will fill their ground every week. Newcastle Stadium will be alive with real fans who will make a real atmosphere.
Yeah, 100%.
And if you can convince top players to go and live in Newcastle rather than go and live in London, because look, the money is in football around the league. Going to Newcastle isn't a big payday. There's plenty of paydays in the Premier League. You know what I mean? Keylor Navas is at Nottingham Forest, for fuck's sake. He was at PSG last season. Yeah. You know, he's a Champions League. He's a champion. Exactly. So if Nottingham Forest fighting relegation can attract Keylor Navas for a couple of years, anyone can end up anywhere. I think that's third and fourth. Last week, after the Man United result, I was bullish bull on for chasing down Manchester United. Thought, beat Bournemouth, win our game in hand, beat Tottenham. We're attacking Manchester United and we're going to finish third. That loss at the weekend has crippled us in more ways than one because of the manner of the loss. I mean, we beat Man United by 7. We had 8 shots on target, right? We 7 of them went in. We were brilliant. That's fine. We had 4 really good chances against Bournemouth and we couldn't take any of them. We didn't help ourselves. And it's the likes of a Newcastle. Conte at Spurs. I think Spurs are absolute dog shit. But Spurs with the likes of Kane and Son have goals in their side that give them a chance. That's all they had. That's all any side needs now to finish fourth is for someone to open the door. We've left the door wide open for the others to punish us. And we got royally punished at the weekend for the loss, for that one loss. We got away with it for previous weeks where we lost. Spurs would lose. Newcastle would drop points. Manchester United were dropping points. Chelsea were nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, Chelsea look like they're finding a bit of confidence. Newcastle pull a win out. We lose. That 3-point gap that we were hoping for with the game in hand is suddenly 6. And look, they're in with a shot. I think at the start of the season, the Evan, the Newcastle fan that we had on, was aiming for conference football. If they had qualified for Europe, that was the be all and end all. And when you look at the squad that they had, it's a European Conference, Europa League squad. The fact that everyone else is rubbish has opened the door for a possibility of a Champions League spot. And they've as good a chance as anyone. And mainly because they're stingy at the back.
Yeah, I think that's the key. I think that's the key, isn't it? And if you look at the 2 teams there, Spurs and Newcastle, I think Spurs have the firepower that can get them into 3rd or 4th, but I think they've one of the worst goalkeepers. I know he's not in at the moment, but I don't trust their defence and I don't trust their goalkeeper, even with you when he's there. I think is one of the most error-prone goalkeepers in world football. Whereas Newcastle have, I don't like Eddie Howe, I'll make no bones about that, but they've signed excellent and built their defence. Their success is built on their defence, really, because you mentioned Trippier and you mentioned Sven Botman, but they also brought in Dan Bourne and Nick Pope. And, that really did give them a base. They don't score many goals. They don't concede many. They're a very much a 1-0 or 2-1 type of team, that way. And that's what I see Newcastle's strength being, just being solid and hard to beat. They've only lost 3 games, 2 of them against us.
Yeah.
And, they're a really, really a hard team to beat. And I do agree with everything that was said there. I think they're taking advantage of a down season for everyone else, but you have to take advantage of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, other teams are throwing that away. Newcastle are placing themselves, and Dicko, you're right, it's a great win for them at the weekend because they're 1-0 up, they get pegged back and they go on and win it. And they were up against Wolves, who, their league table might not, or their league position might not reflect them. I mean, you're looking at a team there that have Adama Traore playing for them, so really, they should be up way higher. They should be challenging for Europe with Adama on the wing for them. So, it's a good win for them. And again, we'll slag them. We'll slag Spurs. Liverpool are not much better. You know what I mean? So we're not in a position to be really slagging anyone. But Newcastle go down as Dicko's winner of the week. So, Kev, I'll come to you next. What have you got for us?
Mine was a loser of the week is the PGMOL. And I know we're sick of hearing about the PGMOL because 2 years ago, nobody knew what that was. We've suddenly became aware of all of these associations because of VAR. I'm a huge fan of an advocate of VAR, and it needs to, for me, be massively improved. And some of the ways that they can improve needs to be done either through the PGMOL or remove the PGMOL and create a new entity for referees to come into the game. We've had a referee sacked in the last few weeks for horrendous mistakes. Referees' decisions are affecting league positions. And ultimately, I think a side is going to get relegated because of refereeing decisions this season. Or a side could get into the Champions League spots because of refereeing decisions. Anthony Taylor yesterday missed that Casemiro tackle. Well, he didn't miss it. He saw it. He gave it a yellow card. That was a horrific tackle. And the fact that he needed to be told to go to a monitor to check that is a disgrace. And he's one of the best referees, apparently, that we've got.
Supposedly the best.
Yeah. And over the last few years, up until probably 2 years ago, I think he probably was. But whatever's happened to him this last 12 months, it's crazy. We can't... I could predict what referees' decisions and justify what decisions they were making pretty easily in my head, no problem. I didn't have to go to Dale on ESPN's Twitter feed to what the hell is going on here. Now, Howard Webb has come in, and Howard Webb has come out with a statement saying, I want VAR to, at all, whenever possible, go with the on-field referee's decision. All right, hang fire a sec. Wind it back a bit. That's not why you're there.
Yeah.
The video assistant referee is there to help the referee on the pitch make the right decision, not to justify him making a wrong decision by compounding it and making it worse. The other thing I'd love to see are two things. For the life of me, I don't understand why the Premier League, the richest league in the world, bar none by a country mile, hasn't already adopted the semi-automated offside technology that's already in the Champions League. It can be introduced mid-season. There's absolutely no reason why it can't. You get faster, more accurate decisions, and there's less time waiting around dilly-dallying for these 2-3 minutes for the right decision on offsides to be made. When it comes to offside, it's black and white. I'm very much along the lines of, look, it is what it is. It's black and white. It's right or wrong. But the semi-automated technology we've seen in the Champions League, we've seen it working in the Champions League. It's fantastic. The decisions are made in seconds because we saw it through the World Cup and it's evolved into the European competitions. There was absolutely no reason why this shouldn't have been implemented into the Premier League now. You know, the other thing I want to hear is the conversations that are had between the referee and the VAR are heard and recorded by the broadcasters. The commentators hear the conversation, so they're recording the conversation. I want to hear that conversation in the post-match analysis of the games as to why decisions were made in the way they were made. I understand that we're never going to get to a situation where we can hear it live like we do watching rugby. I understand that we're never going to get there because, for whatever reason, football is just behind the times when it comes to that. Cricket can do it. NFL can do it and have been doing it for years. Rugby is doing it, but football is just, it's not for us. But there's absolutely no reason whatsoever that conversation cannot be recorded by Sky, BT, whoever is the host broadcaster, and it's edited into the highlights package and the analysis of the game post-match. I think as fans, it would help us understand why decisions are made, and it might, in the long run, help referees. But us, it'll help us to understand their decision-making process. In turn, it will help us understand why they're making the decisions on the pitch. And I won't need to have these conversations on YouTube anymore. It's like the Casemiro one just boils me. The Nick Pope one I don't understand. That's a red card. That's a 4-game ban. That's a penalty to Wolves at a crucial time of the game. And they're down to 10 men. They could collapse. If Wolves go down, that's huge. 3 points at Wolves' end of the table is massive now. Whereas now, Nick Pope stays on the pitch. Newcastle go on and win the game. And it could be the difference between them getting into the Champions League or into a conference spot. We don't know. The Casemiro one, the referee saw it, or he guessed, one of the two, gave a yellow card. That was shin high. That was a shin high over the ball tackle with his wrong foot. He tackled with his right foot to the right hand side. It was a coward's tackle. It was a coward's tackle because Casemiro went in with his wrong foot over the ball in a way to protect him from getting hurt. And if the other guy's foot was planted, that's his leg broken. 100%. That's a leg breaking tackle. That's a horrific tackle. And a referee on the day decided that's a yellow card. I'm sorry. What are they doing? What does Howard Webb come in to do? To give instructions to these referees that are giving these kind of decisions. It's worse they're getting. You know, and it has to change. If the PGMOL can't make the changes that are needed, the Premier League have to look at this because it's affecting the product. And we have the best players in the world, supposedly. Well, some of the best players in the world. We have some of the best managers in the world, no doubt. Why on earth can we not employ the best referees from around the continent to work in the league? Why aren't referees freelance in the same way as players are free to travel and work in associations across the continent? Why can't referees do the same?
Did you hear Pierluigi Collina's absolute tripe about calling up matches if a team's getting a hiding, not playing any injury time, just blowing it up? That's ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? That is ridiculous. On the back of us absolutely lumping Man United, they're talking about.
I've seen that happen.
Mercy.
I've seen that happen before.
Yeah. But the ramifications
been there watching games, international games being like 8-0 or whatever, and then they're just blowing on 90. Just put the team out of misery.
Yeah. Madness. But Dicko, what do you make of the standard of the refereeing and the PGMOL gangster cartel that's in there at the moment?
Look, in some slightly kind of not necessarily disagree, but I have a slightly different view than Kev when it comes to some of those decisions where, so the one, for example, Casemiro's getting a yellow card and then it goes to VAR and it's changed to a red. I get the original decision was wrong, but at the end of the day, that was kind of what VAR was brought in for. It was brought in to correct an original wrong decision. So by following that logic, I guess it did its job there. I mean, just picking up on what Chris Golding I think said in the chat. I mean, the United fans are adamant that wasn't a red. Goldbridge is on a crusade to have it overturned. Wants to expose Andre Mariner. I presume Mariner was on VAR, was he? I don't know. So they're living in sort of cuckoo land, really, if they think that's not a red. And then you get the usual of putting up random tackles of Liverpool players that didn't get red cards all over social media just to kind of try and make a point, which is utter nonsense. When it comes back to the refs, the thing that is that, like, I'm finding more with referees these days is the overall standard of refereeing during a match is got worse. It's generally got worse. And I know that's a sweeping statement, but at the times now that you will see, people whose team won the game, including some of our own games, and people will immediately come out and say, like, that refereeing performance by such and such was absolutely shocking. Consistently getting, fouls wrong, consistently getting, corners wrong or throw-ins wrong, or not pulling players up and giving yellow cards when things are going on, the dark arts are at play, time waste and all this sort of stuff. There just seems to be a lack of control and consistency in general, and that's something that VAR can't correct. Like, it can't correct the general poor displays of referees that we seem to suffer from. Some of the names thrown into the chat, Taylor, David Coots,
Paul Tierney's a blatant disgrace.
Tierney is possibly the worst of the lot when it comes to that overall, within a match, how he kind of communicates, how he seems to have a knack of wind the managers up. It's some skill really that he's got in terms of how he goes through 90 minutes of football. So there's plenty of them. I think I give the obvious exception. I think Michael Oliver is a very decent referee. I think he's a level above all the others. And when I see him in, Champions League and whatnot, he generally, covers himself in a lot of. He comes out to the games with a lot of credit. You know what I mean? I think the players respect him as well. But there seems to be a massive fall off with the rest of the referees. If there's a big game, you know, Liverpool United, Liverpool Man City, or whatever, you know, I want to see Oliver refereeing those games. Generally, we get stung with substandard refereeing. But look, it's happening. It's not just us. It's happening all over the place. I would have been absolutely livid if I was a Wolves fan yesterday, and seeing how blatant that Nick, like it was a different situation, but it was a carbon copy of his instant panic, you know, that went through his mind like he did against Liverpool. You know, when he had that immediate panic that he had to do something crazy, and he did exactly the same. And you could see his body language. He realised straight away that he thought he was absolutely, you know, done at that point. And I'd say he was absolutely inwardly flabbergasted that he didn't get sent off. And that did change things. And as Kev said, that would have been 4 games out. You know, who knows the impact. That is a scenario that should never have happened with the benefit of VAR, but the original mistake was upheld and compounds the anger, I would imagine.
Yeah, indeed. Pete, what do you make of it? Eric Ten Hag came out and was absolutely, his mind was blown at, you know, a red card for Casemiro and 2 penalties not given. Now,
listen, we're not. There's no point in asking managers. We're missing the point. It's not about the quality of referees. It's not even about the decisions that are made. It's about what the British, what the system, PGMOL. It's about what they're trying to avoid, which is transparency and accountability. Like, if you take, for example, the biggest nightmare, the Referees Association don't mind all the social media stuff, all of the reporting stuff. They don't mind all that because it's just, again, even the Premier League don't mind that because, again, it's just everybody perpetuating the talk about the game. That's part and parcel. What they do is they write that off to everybody has an opinion on the game. What they are fiercely trying to avoid is, first of all, transparency. If you throw your mind back to when Harry Kane was awarded a penalty after 20 minutes deliberation by a referee in the lines whose conversation was caught, I don't know if you remember, about 3 seasons ago on camera. That's what they're afraid of. Because everybody picked up on the fact that John Moss literally couldn't make it. Oh, I'm just going to toss a coin and give a penalty.
He asked Martin Atkinson, didn't he?
Yeah,
Martin,
exactly.
can you have a look? No, we can't check that.
They're terrified of that culturally, and it'll bring us into our point later on what I'm going to talk about in my subject. But the other thing that they're terrified of transparency, and they're also terrified of accountability. It's that British thing. It's my decision. So when a referee, for example, is called to a monitor, and this is why a lot of these decisions aren't called, the referee won't go, because it's like the reason for the monitor is somebody says in your ears, listen, something has happened that you may not have seen. And the referee more up with, no, I did see it. I've just decided that it's, for example, there were 3 challenges in the Chelsea-Leicester game. I've no skin in that game, but there were 3 challenges and probably 2 of them should have been red cards. But the referee was like, no, I've seen it and I'm deciding. You know, he didn't even go to the monitor, I think, in 2 of the occasions. And I think what Manchester United fans are picking up on, and this is what kind of annoys you about the whole thing, is they're comparing Casemiro as a standalone challenge is a red card. He's dived in, he's caught the boy, hasn't got the ball, he's gone. So it's all childish stuff. The manager is always going to say, oh, it shouldn't have been. He's going to say he's lost. At the end of the day, Casemiro is 31 years of age. This is his second red card in 4 games. He's a fucking Egypt, to be honest with you. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about ineptitude. It's a red card. However, this whataboutery about another 6 challenges that happened 2 games ago or yesterday, that's all nonsense. To be honest with you, and then from the referee's perspective, it's just what they're terrified the most of, and this is why Kev's original point that the PGMOL are losers, is that they don't want. If they wanted a good system, they'd mic up, they'd let you hear what they're saying, and there would be a real transparency about it. But culturally, the British mentality won't allow for that, and we'll talk about it later on. But forget about transparency, forget about accountability. They are not interested.
Indeed. We'll talk about my subject. We'll end on a happy note. We'll go to my loser of the week, and that is Liverpool. And look, I know it's easy to have a dig at Liverpool, but the reality is, you three can have your say on them. But something, Dicko, that you actually said in WhatsApp earlier was about the fact that they're losing to these bottom of the table teams, and there's something going on there that, it just doesn't make sense that what's going on there. But we can't have any arguments over VAR. I don't think at the weekend, can we? We get a penalty, a correct decision, by the way. But we had our chance to win that game. But Liverpool, I spoke about them last night with Gav. Frustrating. It's so frustrating to watch them at the moment. But when you see them losing, the amount of games, the away games they're losing, the teams they're getting beat by, no disrespect, the Premier League is different now. Teams are good. You know what I mean? The bad teams can turn you over if you don't put in the effort and you don't put in the graft to get something you'll not be handed on. And I just can't understand Liverpool's inability to turn the screw this year. We spoke about Newcastle, probably a bit harsh about them, and Spurs, Manchester United in third. None of them are great, and that's the biggest frustration for me, is that Liverpool have an opportunity here to regain the control, and they just keep throwing it away. They keep shooting themselves in the foot, and it's so frustrating. Kev, I'll come to you. What's your take on Liverpool at the moment and their inability against weaker sides?
It's the frustrating thing for me is if you look at the table, if you look at a group table of Liverpool against the top 6 sides, we've got the most points against the top 6, but we've probably got the lowest against, of the top 6, we've probably got the lowest against the bottom half of the table. It's the one thing. I watched Pep Guardiola's news conference the other day, and he talked about getting up again and again and again and again, year after year after year after year, and being in contention. And it wears on players. Now, I'll give Man City their due. Guardiola has them competing at the very top year on year without fail. They might not win it, but they might not do well in the Champions League, but they're more often than not first or second, more than likely first when it comes to the Premier League. That's a mentality thing. That squad is at the end of a cycle, and it needs a massive rebuild. We all know this, but mentally they're not there, and that's the scary thing, because the senior players that have mentally checked out on this season, and there's no other way to look at it, because they can get themselves up for the bigger games. They can get themselves up for the Man United games. They can get themselves up for Everton. They can get themselves up for even against Real Madrid. That Real Madrid beat us in the second half of that game and punished us for stupid mistakes that we gifted up. But that first half, we were well into that. We were well in it. And if you can get up for those games, but you can't have the same drive and mentality to get up for the Bournemouths, the Wolves, the Fulhams, the Brightons, these kind of games, it reeks of a Brendan Rodgers side going to Swansea and being entitled to something. That's what it feels like at the minute. Is you've got entitled FC, we're Liverpool, we've done this in the last 5 years, and we're just going to turn up, and someone will do something, and on the back of 5 clean sheets, we'll get a win. You talk about us getting away with, or we have enough to discuss with VAR for Liverpool. Konate could have been sent off in that game. Remember, Virgil pulled back Dom Solanke, let him go just in time. But there was a player going in on goal, and Konate fouled him outside the box. They checked to see if it was a foul and if it was inside the box. If that was inside the box, it's a penalty. Konate was last.
I don't even think it was a foul, to be honest. No. I think he got the ball.
But no, he didn't. He got the ball,
and he got the man. I think he got the ball first. We've been screwed over on them many a time, so I'll let him.
But it's the point. The point is, we're opening doors and giving these sides hope and chance. You were saying it last night. They're giving these sides hope and chances. That guy, that young kid that played for Bournemouth, right? You're playing on the right wing. You're playing against Liverpool. It's going to be. He's from Burkina Faso. He is, according to the highlights that I listened to, the best player to come out of Burkina Faso ever. That game is going to be broadcast in his country. He's going to be bursting a gut to make an impression in that game. He's under 21. He's the second most assists in all of the top 5 leagues. this season for an under 21-year-old, and he's playing at Brighton, or sorry, at Bournemouth, for a move somewhere else. It's Moneyball. It's what we used to do. These players are putting in the effort to get a move somewhere better, and we just turned up and expected something to happen because the mentality is not right, the attitude's not right. It's not tactical. It's not a problem with tactics. It's not a problem. Klopp doesn't walk over the white line. This is a pride thing when it comes to players then. We create enough chances in that game to win that game. Any side that you play against is going to create chances. They're going to get the odd goal here and there. But we're not taking our chances. And I think it was yourself or Gav said it last night, and you were dead on what you said. The slightest bit of adversity, and it's like the whole world has come crashing in on your house and pissed on all your chips. It's like they don't know how to deal with it anymore. And that scares me more going into next season about the size of any kind of rebuild, because if the senior players that we want to keep and build around can't get their mentality right, it's got to be a long road back. It's the one thing that when Klopp came in, everyone was hungry. They're all hungry for success, and they all bought in mentally to the target and to what they've achieved. They've won football. They've done everything. But can they go again? Can they get up and do it for a second time and a third time? Jury's still out now.
Dicko. Liverpool, we know they're not at the races at all. And Kev touched on it there. It's people can blame Harvey Elliott and can blame Stefan Wojciech and can blame, Ben Doak and can blame this and that. We shouldn't be playing these lads. Big players are not doing it. Do you see this? And I'll name check these all the time, and people don't like when I name check Salah or Trent or Virgil. I think they're sort of not really pulling their weight this year for whatever reason. Do you think it's just down to a mental fatigue after last season, just going for everything, getting so close to everything, and it came crashing down? Or do you think there's more to it? What I'm trying to say is, do you think next season these players can get back to their best? Is this just a down year for whatever reasons, and next year we'll see the best of them again? Or what way do you see it going?
Do you know what? It's like our season. It just feels so hard to predict. I just can't I can't gauge where it's gonna go. Say from August next season, August this year. Like if you just think about some of the results that we've had, it's almost like every week the result that we're expecting doesn't happen. We've beaten, we won a game 9-0 earlier in the season. We beat Manchester City. We go to Spurs and we win there. Even more recently, we win at Newcastle when probably people weren't expecting us to. We were quaking in our boots for the derby. We win that handily. And then we absolutely, dismantle Manchester United 7-0, unprecedented. But then on the flip side, you go into other games where, you see, our own capitulations against the likes of Brentford, Brighton, and Wolves. Then these are proper, good old fashioned beatings. We're not unlucky in them games. And then we lose to bottom sides in, Forest and Bournemouth this weekend. And you just left scratching your head, because whenever you think you might have an answer to something this season, you just start doubting everything again. It's like, in terms of individual players, there's so much inconsistency from players that we have come to depend on, the likes of Salah, the likes of Trent. Even Virgil this season has just been all over the place from him. And I know he's had a bit of time out with injury and stuff like that. And look, it's given the platform maybe for the likes of Harvey Elliott and Bajcetic to come in and do some things. But that's just a measurement, really, of where we've gone this season. It's just a measurement of how far we've fallen, really, because if we were all guns blazing and we were going for the league and all that sort of stuff, those lads would be coming in and giving us 20 minutes here and there, and we'd be getting the best out of all of our top players who we've depended on for many seasons. So Look, it's a mixture of things. You know, last season has definitely left its impression on the players, left a mark on the players. The World Cup has made this a really weird season. They've got to keep it going until, you know, I was just looking there the other day, a plan to go to the last home game of the season, and it's the 20th of May, for Christ's sake. Like, I mean, you know, and then we've still got another game the following week. You know, so it's going to be a really long season on the squad. Is another reason why I don't feel confident that we'll get fourth, because I just don't see it either in the legs or in the minds anymore that they're going to be capable of doing this. So, like, you know, we need to, you know, the big concern is we need to invest in the squad in the summer. I know we've made some handy signings with the likes, you know, Gakpo. You know, I think we've seen some, you know, positive things out of him in recent weeks. But we really need to strengthen that midfield, and we probably need to add some more depth at the back as well. You know, it's good to see Kanate stringing some games together, but can we depend on that? Not quite sure. Yeah, and if we're not in the Champions League, yeah, let's just hope Jude comes. That's all I can say.
Pinning all your hopes on Jude. Love it. Peter, Liverpool.
Let's cut to the chase. I mean, if you want to use excuses, like we often do, you can talk about the World Cup, or you can talk about the fact that we played every single competitive game that you could play last year. But lots of players played in the World Cup, and we only had 7. And you should be geared for success if you've had it. To be honest with you, the difference between good, really good, which is what we are, extremely good, and great, is often ruthlessness. And I think back to the 20-odd years when Alex Ferguson was torturing us. And the thing that sticks out in my mind about him is he was absolutely ruthless. Very often he would just get rid of someone, maybe 2 or 3 players who you think, my God, these guys are at the peak. What's he doing? How is he going to recover from that? Because it was a mixture of their heads were gone. They were big-time Charlies. They had the success. And he was smart enough as a man to know who he could look in the eye and go, who's going to repeat the success again and again? He'd maybe look at someone like Paul Ince and go, no, you've had your fill, you're big time, you're gone. He might look at Ruud van Nistelrooy, you think you're a big time Charlie, you're causing problems, you're gone. And their fans are like, what's he doing? What's he doing? And he'd freshen it up. I think Klopp is a little bit too loyal. Sometimes you have to make an example out of someone that everybody rates. For example, it was me, Keita I would be releasing him on a free last January, because your greatest ability is your availability. That fella is never available. It's a joke. We've too many fellas like that. So you have a chance to show the rest of the lads the standard here is that you keep yourself in tip-top condition and you have to be available or you're gone. It's great that I love the throwing arms around people and being everybody's father, but sometimes you have to be an absolute bastard if you want to succeed. Like the great, as much I hate to admit it, arguably the greatest manager of modern times. Certainly, I exclude Shankly and Paisley, obviously, but Alex Ferguson, time and time again. How many cycles, how many teams did he turn around to the same effect? Because anyone that remained in the squad knew what the standard was. I just think there's too many fellas. To be honest with you, I like Trent, but his attitude stinks. His face is looking at Henderson, telling him what to do. See me, you're off, and you're watching the next 3 games. I don't care about your greatest hits, great assists. You're out. You're out because you don't do that to your captain. Anyone that steps out of line and tells your captain to fuck off watches the game for 2 or 3 games till he doesn't do that again. It's too much loyalty to fellas that aren't giving it back to him. And some of that, very often Manchester United would suffer. They'd lose games 3 and 4, and people would say, is it over the top? No. All the time he was establishing what the standard was to play for Manchester United, be consistent, and to be up for every single game. He wouldn't accept that. And Klopp shouldn't either. I think Klopp needs to be more ruthless. And I'm hoping this summer that maybe there'll be a couple of surprises. You'll be like, what's he getting rid of him for? What's he getting? Because he's not doing it. He's not doing it consistently.
Yeah, indeed. Look, it's frustrating, all right, to see, but we will just sucker up. Like I said, we could go out and beat Madrid. we could go out and beat the 3 Premier League games that we have coming up, because the players will get themselves up for that. I hate seeing them not doing it for the smaller teams, and it's so frustrating. But look, next year we'll be back. We'll go again. We'll rebuild them and see where we are. As just touched on there, the midfield does need bodies and it does need legs. That will happen. We know that, because players are going to be leaving, and it'll be just interesting to see what happens with that. So look, that's Liverpool done. We've all had our say. We're going to end up on a winner. And Peter, this is you. Let us know what we got.
I have to say Gary Lineker. And just to frame this, to be honest with you, I know it's been done to death over the last few days, but to frame this, I mean, this woman, Suella Braverman, Cruella de Vil, as I call her, attempts to introduce a bill that will, I mean, we won't go into the ins and outs of the politics, but that will essentially demonize children, even children coming off a boat off the English Channel. I mean, it's insanity what's going on. But that's not everybody can have an argument. I don't want to make the argument about that. You can have your opinion either way. But then you've got the BBC that has on numerous occasions come out and said, oh, we remain neutral and we take a neutral stance. It turns out neutral when it suits them. So if you take, for example, Jeremy Clarkson, who not too long ago decided that he wanted to say on his Twitter account that any families, any strikers, people going on strike, should be taken outside and shot in front of their families. No action taken against him. He's a BBC presenter. Then you've got Andrew Neil, who basically fronts and funds right-wing organisations up and down the country. No action taken against him. Then you've got Lord Sugar, probably the most vile creature out of them all. Among his litany of sins, goes on and prints a Photoshop on his Twitter of Jeremy Corbyn sitting beside Hitler. I mean, it's amazing what these right-wing gamins have to do. They actually have to Photoshop things because their world doesn't actually exist. Gary Lineker doesn't cast aspersions, likens language used by Braverman to language used in the 1930s in Nazi Germany. Now, that's a fact. Dehumanizing language is what she used. Now, I'm not here to debate the merits of immigration. I'm not here to debate those merits. I'm telling you that the organization that he works for, says that it's neutral until you present a left wing or a left of center view. Now, let me tell you what's wrong. Why I think Gary Lineker's a hero. Gary Lineker, like unlike many people who are left centered in their brain, is independently wealthy, and is comfortable enough that it doesn't matter to him. So he could easily, if Gary Lineker tomorrow changes Facebook to Gary Lineker MBE with 6 Union Jacks along, ex-England captain, and went the Peter Shilton route, people would just shrug their shoulders and go, yeah, you'd expect that. But he's decided, no, that's not who I am. I'm going to stick to who I am, despite the fact that I'm Mr. England, and I'm going to go the other way. And I just think it's extremely brave. You know, I would put him now in the category of people like James O'Brien on LBC, people that are actually standing up and saying, well, no, you know, you can think what way you like, but you have to qualify your opinion. And you cannot take a position, even as a broadcaster, and say you're neutral. When, I mean, you look at the organization that he works for, you got Richard Sharp, who's the chairman, who basically organized an 800 grand loan for Boris Johnson. You know, you've got at least 4 or 5 people sitting. I mean, Robbie Gibb, who basically was Theresa May's, communications advisor. You've got this litany of conservatives. You know, listen, I have nothing against the BBC. I've done work with the BBC and I'm grateful for it. They always pay on time. However, don't pretend to be neutral. And then, for example, go and commission a slaughterhouse piece about Qatar. Don't pretend to be neutral. Don't pretend that you take a neutral stance when it comes to politics and leanings, when really you immediately move to suspend somebody like Gary Lineker, who's done far less than, as I said, Jeremy Clarkson, who is a disgusting human being, Alan Sugar, and Andrew Neil. It's just crazy. So for that reason alone, Gary Lineker is my absolute winner of the week. Yeah,
no, that's fair enough. I mean, I know we don't want to go down the political route of it and all, but the whole thing with the sending them to a safe third country in Rwanda is just absolutely baffling to me. Like how Rwanda can be seen as, a safe haven for these migrants. You just look at the Madagascar plan that the Germans had in the 30s for the Jewish people, and you'll see the parallels there. But Dicko, I'll come to you. What do you make of the whole Lineker debacle? Do you think anyone came out winning? Do you think it was always going to end the way it ended, or what do you see? What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, the aspect that I did like out of it was the fact that, you know, when Gary Lineker was, you know, essentially taken off the air for Match of the Day, you know, I think, you know, you got to say it sort of, you know, it was heartening to see that all of his colleagues around him rallied around him, and there was the solidarity there of other presenters, co-presenters, commentators, standing behind, you know, Gary Lineker on that principle, and obviously it had the BBC. I can only imagine, you know, what was going on, and the firefighting and the crisis management and all the long hours and calls that were probably going on behind the scenes to try and come up with some kind of alternative. And I don't actually know. I don't even know what they did. Did they literally just show games without comment? I don't know. I didn't even with Liverpool with Liverpool not being part of the. With part of my thinking on after Saturday's, you know, mess of our own, I didn't have any desire to go watch a Match of the Day anyway, whether there was anyone on it or not. So that was the aspect that I did like. Now, I was a little bit disappointed that it all kind of, you know, it all ended relatively quickly, you know, and that, you know, this kind of, you know, sort of agreements being reached and whatnot, and he's back on. I think I would have had more respect for Gary Lineker had he have told the BBC to, you know, what they could do with their job, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a bit convenient now to be going back to a job that pays him about 1.5 million, 2 million a year.
Well, he has a contract. He has a contract, Dicko, and it goes two ways, to be fair. I mean, listen, this whole thing is a distraction, as you know, is a distraction for the government in the UK, you know, away from a disastrous Brexit. So let's not get away from I don't think he should be made to fall on his sword because basically he's called people out. I think that's unfair as well. He's got a contract, and at the end of the day, if it ends up in court and he breaks that contract, you know, it's costly. So I don't see why he should have to pay the price for other people's distractionary, you know, tactics, to be quite honest with you. So I think I'm
sure he had his reasons, but I would have given a bit more respect if he'd have, at the very least, made them squirm and sweat over this a little bit.
But they are squirming. They are squirming.
Look, I mean, you know, basically everyone's opinion on Gary Lineker is, you know, essentially based on their, you know, party political persuasions, and I've seen comments in the chat one way or the other, you know, and it probably links to whether they're, you know, left leaning or right leaning. But look, you know, the BBC at the end of the day, you know, they've brought this mess upon themselves now. You know, I think in my view, they were way too hasty in taking them off the air. There was other avenues and other ways that they could have handled this. As Pete says, you know, it can't be one rule for one and different rules for others. You know, you have to apply consistency, and they've been caught out on this one. So look, I'm sure it will rumble on over the coming days and weeks. There's obviously going to be new policies and guidelines, social media. You know, look, this again. The other aspect of this is social media. Like, you know, I think so. Organizations are they're so behind the curve with all of this in terms of making sure that you know that they understand some of the implications of people having that platform. You know, we've seen it in the earlier days of social media with footballers themselves falling foul of going out there and making, you know, putting silly posts out on the likes of Twitter. I think clubs, you know, have obviously, you know, managed to educate all footballers at this stage, and we see a far less sort of gaffes being made. But yeah, the days of everyone handling social media to the way that organisations expect them to is still a little way off. Yeah, I think.
Indeed. Kev, one of the things that came out was you had the likes of Nadine Doherty's coming out saying, the BBC can't be seen as impartial, while all the time it was pressure from authority government that were sort of pushing the agenda one way. What did you make of the Lineker affair?
Look, originally my loser of the week was the BBC, but I knew Pete was going to be talking about Lineker, so I changed my mind. The BBC have handled this atrociously, and the reason is they cling to this notion of being impartial and unbiased. That's impossible. Being unbiased in today's world in the media is impossible, because you look at the amount of channels the BBC cover: local radio, world service, reporters all around the world, plus the broadcasters that they have on terrestrial television. They can't control everything, and they can't monitor what every single person does. This Tory government are terrified of Gary Lineker and people like him, because Gary Lineker has a platform. And as Pete says, he's independently wealthy and he doesn't give a shit about what he says. If he'll say what he thinks and he'll back it. He'll back it up if need be. You've had other BBC presenters do the exact opposite, and nothing's happened. What Pete said about Gibb and the rest of them, the board directors at the BBC, and the way they handled Lineker to take him off air shows that they bent to political pressure, because they were at the dispatch box on the Thursday screaming for Lineker's head. Yeah. And by the next day, he was pulled from the air. Everyone walked with him from his own. Alex Scott is at the start of her career. She's a woman of colour. She's trying to make her way in football, and she walked. She was one of the first to come out and say, I wasn't booked to be on it. If I was asked, I wouldn't go on it. The likes of the local radio commentators who do not earn savage money all pull their services from the weekend. This was an unofficial strike in every way you look at it. It was an unofficial strike. Yeah. Any other industry will go
length and breadth of the BBC. Exactly. Up in Scotland, didn't matter. Yeah, TV, radio, whichever, I mean,
the thing is, the one thing that the BBC was always prided itself and was respected around the world, and is respected around the world is the notion that they're neutral. There's a big difference between the word neutral and impartial. If you're trying to be impartial, you have to give balance to both sides. We saw through Brexit that giving balance to lies is nonsense. Whereas if you're neutral and you're independent, if you're independent, then you can call the bullshit. Yeah. The best, most reliable news coverage I've seen in the UK in the last decade is Channel 4. It does have some government funding, but it's kind of like RT in that respect, where it's partially funded by the license fee, but it's also a commercial station. Exactly. And they're probably the most independent news coverage that you'll get in the UK.
Sorry, Kev, before you go any further, can I ask you, Keith, just two things to call out. James's fact here, which is not a fact. It's a misnomer. What it is, it's because of the condensed timing. It's proportional, so they actually lost viewers. So, James, I know that a lot of gammons. Hang on a second. I know that a lot of gammons are kind of saying that, but again, that's gammon right wing. Yeah. And the second thing, there's a comment, a disgusting comment from another gammon, and you can always see that they never put their real names. It's usually a fake name. That's how you know gammons. You lot have lost the plot, I'm afraid. Stay out of politics. Lineker was out of line, end of now. Smoke screen for Brexit. Yes, it is. I'm sorry. Stop it. Guys, please don't turn this into some ideological woke fest. I hate that word. Hang on. I hate these racist gammons using the word woke as negative. Let me tell you something. I'm woke and proud. And the reason I work so much lately, whereas I wouldn't have worked 15 years ago or 20 years ago, is because the world has gone woke. So I'm sorry, you had a 400-year head start, Mr. Friday's cold one. So please, fuck off out of the comments. In fact, get rid of him. I hate these gammons. Get rid of them. Get rid of them. Please.
Oh, I didn't see that, boy. I'm looking and scrolling.
See that? The word woke. Woke is a positive. Anyone that's watching this, woke is a positive thing. It means that you're alive and awake to the inequalities that have been driving this world for centuries. Anybody using woke as a negative term is a racist asshole. Get rid of them.
I agree with you there. I can't understand anybody that's proud to be anti-woke. You know what I mean? Like, it just baffles me.
It's like, tell me who you are by the language you use.
Well, it's usually a fake name, Kev. It's a fake name because these people are fucking cowards.
I know.
You know what I mean?
But look, I mean, go back to the thing, right? If you have a BBC that's independent, okay, and an independent BBC, I think, to the wider world is important because the BBC's broadcasting to virtually every country on the planet. And if you can trust what they're telling you is the truth, then it's something you can rely on. The difference of what happened last week was the way they bent, the way they folded under pressure. And you're seeing the pressure being told today now with the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg and the extreme far right of the Tory party calling for the pulling of the licence fee. Ultimately, this is their threat that they hold over the BBC. If you look at it from another angle and you turn around and say, well, the guy who formed GB News is now on the board of directors at the BBC, which he is, and he was appointed by this government. And if you turn around and say, well, hang on, he was sent in there to wreck the notion that the BBC is independent or the BBC has the ability to be impartial. They're doing a fucking good job of it. Now, Lineker comes out of this really well because it's not a new thing that he decided to wake up in the morning and just tweet that. He's consistent in what he said. Neville uses his platform, and he's a right pain in the arse at times. But there's two things with Neville. You go and watch the overlap last week. You go and watch the interview he did on the overlap last week that he did with Alexander Usyk. And it's probably one of the best video podcasts that I've watched in a long, long time. Brilliant stuff. And then you go and listen to his punditry in Sky. And then you look at his Twitter feed. It's like there's three different personalities in there. You look at Lineker's social media, and then you look at what he says when he's on television. They're one and the same. They're the same person. You know, he's never gone on the BBC, on the television on the BBC, and said anything controversial apart from the Qatar World Cup, where at the start of the introduction to Match of the Day, to the BBC's coverage of the World Cup, he spent about a good few minutes talking about the problems with the World Cup being in Qatar. Now, like Pete said, they're under contract. They have to go and cover this. They could have pulled out if they wanted to. But would you rather be there and say what you said from there? Or would just, Gary Lineker sat at home. Oh, so what? You know, it wasn't going to affect the World Cup being held there. If the journalists, the Miguel Delaney's of this world, and the other journalists who went there covered it warts and all, as opposed to some of the sanitized coverage that you got. Look, ultimately, for the sake of Britain and the Britain I left compared 10 to 12 years ago compared to the Britain of today, they're two completely different countries. And I think if there's any chance of Britain getting back to the Britain that it was, and I hope it does, because I loved living over there. I really, really loved it. But something has to change. And the messaging and the ability to consume information in the UK is so toxic now. I could never envisage a time where the equivalent of the National Front would have a platform on television to speak on a 24-hour news station, and that news station lose 30 million a year, and it's all just written off. And that's what's happened. And that's what's happened. That's what's happened with GB News. GB News lost £30 million last year,
and they'll still be on air.
They'll still be on there next week, and nothing will change. It's vital that you have an independent BBC that can stand up to its employer, its funder, and call a spade when it needs to be called. And at the moment, they're afraid to.
And
you look at the likes of Emily Maitlis, who's left, and John Sopel, and all these stellar names from the BBC have left, and they've formed their own podcast because they weren't free to talk about what needed to be talked about. James O'Brien was on Newsnight, and he walked away from it because he wasn't allowed to say what needed to be said.
Yeah. And you're right.
And that's editorial. That's an editorial choice. And
You're
that
right,
has to
Kev.
change.
To be honest with you, if you look at, for example, something like Brexit, you know, the Brits are so frustrated. The British public is so frustrated, you know, that the older people have voted and it's absolutely disastrous. They've been lied to. So, but rather than say, listen, we've been lied to, how do we get around this? How do we get out of it? A lot of them would rather double down on the lie, put their fingers in their ears and blame foreigners trying to escape war zones, trying to escape horrors in their own, and blame them. They prefer that. That's what I find profoundly depressing. But anyway.
Look, it's one of them things, isn't it? I think, you know, Gary, I think what got lost in the whole thing, my 2 cents on this, what got lost on the thing is the tweet was absolutely nothing in it. There was nothing in the tweet that was controversial, that was wrong, that was antagonistic. Do you know what I mean? It was very much just have we no sense of humanity anymore for these people? The language is similar to what came out in Germany in 1930s. There's no mention of Nazis. Yeah, no mention of Nazis. That all came from the right side. Yeah,
they expanded on it. Yeah.
Dehumanizing language.
And rolled with it and turned it into a bigger thing than it was. Like, people are going on like he said something that was absolutely inflammatory. He didn't. It wasn't. And that's the thing. That's why I think a lot of people do support what Gary Lineker said, because if you're against what he said, well, then I think you need to take a long, hard look at yourself in the mirror. And that there's no other way to say it. If you're against what he says, as far as I'm concerned, you're a bit of a scumbag, and you're letting the world know what you are without saying what you are. And look, there's nothing really we can do about that. But I just think it got blown out of proportion, and I just think it was.
No, it's like Sukhbir is saying there. It exposes the fear. What it is like we said about referees earlier on, what they don't want is transparency, and they don't want to be exposed for what they are. I mean, and you only have to look behind the premise of impartiality to see what really drives it. And that's you know, the right wing agenda to cover up for this. I mean, the Tory party is 13 years in power, and Britain's education system, its banking system, it's absolutely in the toilet. So they need a scapegoat, and the convenient scapegoat is foreign people. It's just the way it works over there. It's the way it works.
Let me tell you something.
And so there's a fear of the truth. There's a real fear of it.
Let me tell you something. This next election in the UK is going to be fought on 2 things. What is a woman? And stop the boats.
So fear, 2 basically. Things. Fear.
They can't run on the economy.
Wars.
They can't run on the public services. Yes. They can't run on wages. They can't run on housing. They can't run on the NHS.
No, it's like the United States, Kev. You know, the Republicans, they say, they talk about banking, and then they get in and they say Hunter Biden's laptop. It's the same principle. Culture war, transvestites, people who are transgender. It's all about culture war. So you're trying to appeal to older generations to get out and vote, unless you want all of these horrible, you know, gay people, horrible transsexuals, horrible people invading your lives. Those are the people you should be afraid of. It's the same in the UK. They can't run on the platform of issues, so they run on prejudice and fear. People lap it up. That's what it terrifies me. Me.
I wish people would. I mean, just going back on what I mentioned earlier around the solidarity of people coming out and standing behind Lineker and all the co-presenters. I mean, I just wish that same, you know, and that's to me that seemed to be widely, you know, sort of accepted and sort of, you know, celebrated. I just wish sometimes people would apply the same logic to some of these, you know, some of these workers who are standing up for some of their beliefs and how they're being treated, you know, in the workplace, because that doesn't seem to be replicated, you know, when it comes to, you know, the nurses or the postal workers or, you know, the train drivers. You know what I mean? There are the parts of society who are starting to be demonized, which, you know, living in Ireland and looking across at that sort of thing, it does make me extremely sad. It really does.
Yeah. It's a sad state of affairs. Right, before we finish up, lads, I just want to throw in that the show was brought to you by bookmakers.com. I forgot to say it at the start. Bookmakers.com. Go over and look at the website, sign up. Great stuff over there. If you're not into gambling, which not people not all people are. They have other stuff there. Gav is doing a podcast with them every week, and it's a lot of information that you can take in. So really give it a look and give it a subscribe if you can. While you're in the mood for subscribing, have a look at the old Bang Average Golf as well. Gav's having a stinker on there trying to play with these clubs. So give that a subscribe as well. It's actually good crack if you're into the golf. I'm not into golf and I'm enjoying it as well. Yeah. But before we go, I do just want to say again about the charity, any help we can get for the charity push. It's 12 ladies from Ashbourne, the GAA club, and they're running the Dublin Marathon for Cancer Research. And, these aren't athletes that are doing this. These are just 12 mothers, 12 women that have decided to try and do something. And you're right, Pete, it's to be applauded. Anyone that can help, any little bit you can do, if you can share it, that might be the key. You know what I mean? If we can share it, if we can donate, contact the email address, lfcdaytrippers@gmail.com. If you want to donate prizes to the golf day, things like that, every little bit helps. So anything we can do on that, if we can just push that forward as well. We'll never apologize for pushing charities forward, because, it's one of the things we're really proud of on the show is that we do try our best to help where we can, use our platform for positive things. You know what I mean? So we can keep doing that. I know he's getting annoyed with us saying it, but we'll never apologize for it. So before we finish up, Pete, thanks for joining us tonight. Great to have you. Getting a lot of good comments in that chat tonight. Great to see you back. Pistol P.
Well, listen, at the end of the day, football is important, but my God, the world is falling apart around our ears. Yeah. It really is.
100%. Dicko, you came early tonight, which is unusual for you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for that compliment, Keith. It's been stated in the past. I'm sure it'll be stated again in the future. One last thing, because I'm amazed. We've gone through an hour 16 minutes. We haven't even mentioned the fact that there's a big Champions League game. I'm just going to give my prediction, because I like a prediction.
Go on, you can all have a prediction. Dicko was a Jonah for anyone that doesn't know.
I know. Although I called the last 2 weeks perfectly. I knew he'd take care of United, but I also enjoyed every minute of the content that was available all the way up until 12:30 on Saturday. I knew what was coming. But my prediction for the Bernabeu is a 2-1 win for Liverpool. Not enough, but a win nonetheless.
I like that. Come on, Pete. What's your prediction for the Bernabeu?
I think we win it 3-1. I think they, it's like stick or twist for them.
Agony.
I think we just about fall short.
Thanks for that, Kev. You've evicting people and all tonight to get on the show. We thought you might have been late. You got in on time.
Yeah, got in on time. I'm hoping that we can go and I'm just hoping we can go and win. Just go to the Bernabeu and win. It's a tough place to go. Look, Anfield to us, on a European night is huge. It's a big advantage. The Bernabeu is a huge advantage to Madrid.
Is it though? Is it, Kev?
No, in Europe,
I've been there. It's a museum.
In Europe, it is. It's a serious stadium when it comes to
Japanese tourists running around taking photographs. There's no
I'll tell you, whatever it is about the tourists, mate, and the Madrid Daytrippers, they have a tendency to get results at home in Europe. They're a very, very tough side to beat. I'd love to go in and just go into the international break on a positive. I'd hate to go in on the back of anything other, something that can wipe that Bournemouth performance away and just let us bounce into the next 2.5 weeks into all the fun and games we're going to have and not worry about anything. Whereas,
Kev, do you have any images of white hankies being waved at the Bernabeu?
It's a long time ago. I love that. I would love that.
It's about as intimidating as Coronation Street, mate. If you want to intimidate, go to the San Sebastian.
I'm looking for Rita Fairclough to be in the stands. Looking for your man Alan Tate.
Give us a prediction, Kev.
I think we'll win it 2-0. I think we'll get a clean sheet. I think Madrid will just try to soak us up, hit us on the break, and they won't take us. They won't take us lightly. I think we'll win on the night, but you fucking never know with us, do you?
Yeah. All very sensible.
We're We're just mad enough to go and do
Yeah.
it just out of spite, like.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he went 2-0 up. I can kind of see that how it got, and then Madrid will wake up and they'll kind of put us back.
We'd be unbearable. Like. If we got through this time, we'd be fucking unbearable, and the world would know.
And
it.
deservedly so, by the way.
Absolutely, I think it would be a bigger It would be a bigger win than the Barcelona win.
Yeah.
It would be. It would, because doing it at home against Barcelona was phenomenal. It was probably one of the best nights I've ever had watching Liverpool. But to go away after being written off completely, it would top that. It really would. It would top that.
Well, I think Liverpool win 5-0. So we'll march on into the next round. So we'll leave it at that. I've been your host, Keith. This has been Winners or Losers.
Keith's basically... You're just waiting for the draw on Friday. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
That's it, yeah. I don't know what you're all worried about. 5-0
Bring on Napoli.
Yeah, exactly. Sort them out. We owe them a favour as well. Yeah. Now, listen, this has been Winners and Losers. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see us all again
Even the Gammons. Good night, Gammons.
Take care.